Does your project have smoke barriers? If it does, I want to share something with you in this Firestop coffee break training that is missed altogether too often, and it could be a potential liability for you. Are you ready? This little training could be the difference between getting it right and getting it wrong. It could be the difference between you bearing the liability for not complying with the building code. And if there's ever a fire, this could be the difference between life and death. Then whatever liability you carry will be multiplied dramatically. Let's make sure that this is not a problem for you. It doesn't matter if you're an architect, a builder, or an owner. The information that you need to know is the same. The only difference is what you'll do with it. There's a whole chapter on smoke barriers. If you're not familiar with it, you can find it online. We don't have time to go over the whole thing here, but basically when you dive into it, you'll see that smoke barriers can be walls or they can be floors. They have to have a minimum of a 1 hour fire resistance rating, but the code may require them to have a higher rating depending on what's happening in your building. That section, however, will refer you to section 714. This code section will effectively tell you that all of your penetrations in a smoke barrier have to meet two requirements. One is a requirement for the individual penetration, and then the other requirement is for the wall as a whole. It says that a single penetration cannot have an air leakage in excess of 5 CFM per square foot. This will be tested in a lab where people have easy access to everything as they install the firestop. They won't be standing on top of a ladder working on a penetration that's 15 feet off the floor. They won't be thinking about the fact that this installation, the one that they're about to complete, will need to provide an F rating or an L rating. They're just slapping firestop on and moving on to the next thing. The lab team, however, is doing the installation knowing that it will be tested for air leakage. They know it will be tested for fire exposure, and we're talking about literal trial by fire. Do you think the crews on your project ever think that there's going to be a fire in the building that they're working on? Most people think, it'll never happen to me. And most of those people don't even know this code requirement. So, are they going to get this right? What do you think? If your project has smoke barriers, there's a pretty good chance that it will also require special inspection of firestop. If you are the building owner or the architect, there are a few things that you can do that will give you a level of confidence that the team that's doing the special inspection are capable of following the requirements of the building code, which are kind of directly connected to the requirements of the inspection standard. You can read the codes, you can read the inspection standards, and you can read the ICC special inspection manual, and then you can try and figure out how all of those things connect together and what to do with it. Or you could just join us for our Firestop coffee break training where we'll do all of that together. We actually have two trainings. One will help you figure out if a firestop special inspection is required on a project, and the other one will help you vet the special inspector to make sure that they meet the requirements of the codes and the inspection standard. If you're interested in learning more about either of these classes, please visit the training section of our website. Then here's the fun part. You can probably check for L ratings in your document review phase before the construction starts, so that you can be sure that all of the details that you need to have L ratings will actually have L ratings. And you can even talk with the trades so that they're aware of this requirement. But at some point, the plumber, the electrician, the mechanical contractor, and the fire sprinkler contractor, and the crews running any security or IT or anything else that I might be missing as I rattle off all this long list to you, you can be sure that they all have to look at smoke barriers and check that they meet this additional requirement for smoke barriers. You have to look at every 100 square foot chunk and then be sure you don't have more than 50 CFMs. If you're a contracts person, then you'll want to make sure that this is not excluded from anybody's contracts, because I will tell you right now, this work is a headache. It's important, but it's not easy. And anyone who has been through this once might just be smart enough to exclude it from their contracts. I told you, that was the fun part. But just because the code gives you bonus fun sections that you have to deal with, if you're the architect or the general contractor, there's a whole different requirement for fire-rated joints. That means head of wall, bottom of wall, and all the other fire-rated joint applications. This particular training is for plumbers. If you need to know more about that, we have a whole training segment called Firestop 101 for fire-rated joints, and we tackle that and so much more. If you're looking at this and thinking, that's gonna suck, well, I want you to think about this like going to the DMV for your driver's license. No, seriously. Let's say you move to a new state. You have however many days to get a new driver's license. We all know that there's some sort of punishment for driving without a license. But if you're in a new state, you probably don't know what that punishment is. I mean, you probably don't even know where to go to get a new driver's license. So maybe you put it off and you think it's not that important. I mean, what's the punishment for driving without a license? It can't be that bad. Or can it? Well, here in New Jersey, it's a fine between $200 and $500 and up to 60 days in jail. But if you're in Indiana, you're looking at 6 months to 2 years in jail and a fine of $10,000. Now, I had to Google that because I had no idea. So what's the fine for not getting this L rating stuff right? Well, that's not something that you can Google because it's kind of like driving without a driver's license. You get pulled over by a cop, you might be able to sweet talk your way out of it without a fine and get nothing more than a reminder and maybe a slap on the wrist. On the other hand, it could mean jail time. This L rating stuff is kind of the same. No one knows what the penalty is. You just know that you shouldn't roll the dice with it. If I were working with a construction defect lawyer and the project had smoke barriers and they got anything at all wrong, I would bet money that they got this firestop stuff wrong. And I would bet big that the L ratings got overlooked. Well, there are a few jurisdictions where you won't be able to build without getting this right. And then there are other places where no one really knows better. What's it like on your projects? Do you pay attention to this? Does your team do a review early in a project, or does this get overlooked? Maybe your project doesn't have smoke barriers, in which case none of this matters and you're off the hook. I would love to hear what happens on your projects. Thanks for joining us for this Firestop Coffee Break training. If you want more information on any of this, please don't hesitate to reach out. And as I always say, if you want to build better, we want to help.